When you first start playing tennis and inevitably fall in love with it, there are going to be lots of decisions you have to make about the equipment you choose. Even if we just start with rackets, you've got rackets made of different materials, you've got different weights, those come with different swing weights, different head sizes, different grip sizes. So there's lots to work through in order to give yourself the best chance of playing tennis and enjoying tennis with the right equipment.
So if we talk about rackets first, the first thing we're going to talk about is the material. And without getting into too much detail, because you don't really need it, there are three main types of tennis racket. Aluminium, graphite, and then graphite and aluminium composite, so a blend of the two in the middle. So the first thing, so you know what you're looking at, if a racket is in two pieces, if you see that there's a join here, that means it's made of aluminium and will be cheaper, but should be avoided for the pure reason that as you progress through the course and you get better and better, the racket's not going to give you any support, any structure when you play the ball, so more likely to lead to injuries. They're often lightweight, so they're best being avoided. A composite racket is one complete piece, so you see there's no join on the racket. And this is where it gets difficult because it's impossible to be able to tell as a new player what's graphite and what's a aluminium graphite composite blend. And this is probably where you're first starting out, is the sweet spot where you want to get in terms of price point and playability. You're not necessarily going to feel the benefit of going for a full graphite racket to start with, so a composite is probably a good place to start. So to give you an idea of price points and where you should be looking, those composite rackets are going to be around £60, £70, something like that. You can get full graphites coming in at 90-ish, so that's also a good place to push to. Obviously you can go and spend £200, £300 on a racket, but you're not going to get the benefit of that to start with. Maybe a year or two down the line of your tennis journey, you might start to feel that. In terms of racket material, as these change from aluminium, which you've already kind of dismissed essentially, to composite rackets, to full graphites, obviously it depends a little bit on how seriously you're going to take your tennis. If you think, oh, I'm not really sure, I'm maybe going to play for 3-6 months over the summer, then a composite will probably be okay. But if you think, God, yeah, I'm really getting into this, I really love it, I'm going to play every week or twice a week, all year round and for the foreseeable future, then getting that graphite racket makes a lot of sense. In terms of general advice, the best thing to do is find a local shop. As you say, we're obviously here in North London, but there's lots of independent retailers who are experts all around the country and all around the world, and they're the people who will be able to best advise you based on your size and strength and hand size in terms of grips, everything like that. However, if you aren't able to find an expert, we can give you a few little quick tips in terms of grip size and weight. So grip sizes, these are, just to complicate things, measured and displayed in two different ways depending on where you are in the world. So in nice simple terms, we have grip size 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, 4, 5. That would be straightforward, wouldn't it? But however, no, we also have 4 1/4, 4 3/8, 4 1/2, a different way of measuring the grip, which is actually the circumference of the handle. So on lots of rackets, you'll see that it's displayed as both. So you've got grip size 3 and 4 3/8 next to it. Your average male adult tennis player will need a grip size 3, and your average female tennis player will need a grip size 2. So that's a good place to start. The general rule of thumb, when you hold the racket, you should have a nice gap between the end of your fingers and your thumb, where you can fit the index finger of your other hand in the gap. Not too tight and not too loose. As you can see, I'm an average size male, and it's a grip size 3, it works perfectly for me. In terms of racket weight, there's a huge range starting from 240 grams, going all the way up to 340, 350 grams. So this is where it probably has the biggest impact on your game. You want to use a racket that you feel that feels maneuverable, and you want to use something that's probably the heaviest you can without it feeling like you're lugging a massive weight around with you. Again, to give you some context, a kind of mid-weight, a mid-range is going to be about 285 grams. So you're probably looking somewhere between that to 300 grams for your average male player, and then similarly for females, slightly lighter, 285 down to about 270. Again, it depends on you, it depends on more than the grip size, it depends on your size and strength and what you're used to, but those are the kind of ranges we'd suggest you starting with. You're not going to go far wrong if you stay in those sort of brackets. If you did decide to go for a better quality full graphite racket or even a performance frame, you should look to get a demo version of that racket first. Now, most retailers will offer you this. Also, a lot of internet suppliers will also do this, but it can be quite hard to find on their websites, but do look carefully. And basically what this means is you can get a version of the racket that's been tested and been used before. You can try it, see how you get on before you make that bigger purchase. So whether you don't know whether you want a stiffer, more powerful racket or more flexible control frame, it's the perfect opportunity for you to try before you buy. In your tennis racket, you have string. This is kind of vital to the game of tennis, and when you're choosing a racket, it's something that you need to consider. Now, some rackets come pre-strung. If it comes pre-strung, we would suggest that you stick with it and use that in the short term. If it comes unstrung, that means the racket's probably a slightly better quality, which is great, but you're going to need to get it strung. So there are two types of string. Polyester strings, which are monofilament. These are tougher, designed to be more durable, so they're people who kind of break strings more regularly, which is unlikely to be you. Someone who's getting into tennis or has played not that much tennis, you're unlikely to be using loads of spin or hitting the ball really hard. So we would generally avoid those polyester durable strings. Which leads us onto multi-filaments and synthetic guts. These are softer, they create less force when you contact the ball, which means there's less impact going into your arm and elbow, so it reduces the risk of some potential tennis elbow issues. In terms of string tension, that's the tightness that the strings are put into the racket. There's a big range that this can be. We would always suggest that you go for a mid-range tension, which will always be written on the racket itself, but it's going to be in the region of 50 to 55 pounds of tension. If you're in Europe and you're in kilos, there's a conversion that I don't know the answer to.
We often get asked, what are these? This is a vibration dampener. What it does is essentially stop the strings from vibrating so much. It doesn't affect the way you play, it doesn't affect what it does to the ball, but it does affect how it feels and how it sounds. So for me, I don't like the sound without a dampener on, so I play with a dampener. Lots of other people don't. It is purely personal preference. If you take some of the best players in the world, some of them play with dampeners, some of them don't. All the dampener does is simply change the feel. They come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. You could have frogs, minions, a funny little alien thing. Dampeners come in all shapes and sizes. Try playing with a dampener, try playing without, and see which you prefer. It's just a personal preference. Your racket will come with a grip on it. And as far as grips are concerned, you don't need to worry about it for some time until it starts to wear and maybe starts to look something like this. It might look a bit knackered, it might look a bit frayed, it might look a bit damaged, and then it might be time for either a replacement grip to replace the one that's on there, or an over grip which goes over the top of the existing grip. Something fresh, maybe something tacky, something more absorbent if your hands get sweaty. All about personal preference. Try out different over grips when you need to, and figure out which one works best for you. Grips, like dampeners, come in all shapes and sizes, some more absorbent than the others, some tacky, some perforated to allow the sweat to go through. Again, it's really about personal preference. The next bit of tennis equipment you might want to consider is shoes. Now, a tennis shoe is specifically designed for multi-directional movement, so it's a better choice than your running shoe, which is designed to make you go forwards. The tennis shoe has a midsole, which supports this multi-directional movement. They also tend to come with extra support on the outside of the shoe to stop you from rolling your ankle, as this bit buffers up against the court as you push off and into it. Tennis shoes also come in a variety of soles. These are largely dependent on the type of surface you're going to play on. You've got shoes that are specifically made for clay courts, shoes that are made for hard courts, shoes that are made for grass courts, and there are all court shoes which will do a good enough job across all surfaces. It's worth considering a tennis shoe to try and avoid injury, maximise your movement on the court, making tennis as simple as you possibly can. Unlike a running shoe, tennis shoes like to feel very, very hard. They're a much stiffer shoe than a running shoe. They've got almost no flex in them. That's me trying to squeeze as much as I can. This is to give you the support that you need when changing directions a lot on a tennis court. So, not very flexible, they're going to feel quite hard on your feet to begin with, but much, much better than a running shoe or a gym shoe when you're actually on the court playing the game. As for tennis balls, they come in a huge variety. All we would suggest is that you don't buy the cheapest ones that you find. Buy a good quality tennis ball, buy a Slazenger, buy a Wilson, and don't buy the sort of training balls. They tend to be hard and very sort of unforgiving. Go for a slightly more expensive ball. It will be worth it in the long run. Something around 7, 8, 10 pounds, that's gonna see you right. Don't choose the cheap balls. It's a false economy.
When it comes to buying your tennis balls, there will be hundreds and hundreds of options. So like we said before, you do not want to buy cheap tennis balls. So when you go to a proper tennis shop, you want to be getting your balls from a reputable brand. We suggest Wilson, Babolat, Head, Yonex, Slazenger, a tennis brand who are going to make a good tube of balls. It's going to cost you around £8 if you're in the UK for a tube of 4 balls. You might also see occasionally these coloured balls. So this is just a quick explanation of what they are. So they were designed for children. The International Tennis Federation now recognises mini tennis as a game, and this is what they're for. Essentially, they're designed to make tennis slower and easier for children. Red balls are for 8 and unders. Orange balls are for 9 and unders, and then we come to green balls, which are 10, 11-year-olds. Now, these are only 25% softer than a proper tennis ball, professional tennis ball, the ones that we talked about before. Therefore, there is a benefit. You can potentially use a green tennis ball as an adult. If you're playing on a particularly bouncy court, maybe it's a hard court, it's a tarmac court in the UK, or you're playing somewhere really, really hot and the ball keeps bouncing up over your head, nothing wrong with just trying a green ball for a bit, slowing everything down and making it a little bit easier. So that's what they are, and you could use a green ball if you want.
There may be a few other bits of equipment you find you need when you get on court and you start playing. This might be a water bottle, a hat to protect you from the sun or the rain if you're in England, a ball clip. If you haven't got a pocket in your shorts or your trousers or your skirt, ball clip. Shorts or trousers, but with pockets. You need a ball in that pocket for the second serve. Sweatbands, it can get hot out there. Headbands, heads get hot too.